with ReefBum is sponsored by Polo Reef, Champion Lighting and Supply, and Polyp Lab.
Hey, what's happening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Rappin with ReefBum. I'm your host, Keith Berkelhamer. So, on today's live stream, I welcome back Will Bramucci from Epic Aquaculture. What's going on there, Will?
Hey, Keith, how you doing? I'm doing well. Hanging in there.
Hanging in there in Arizona.
Yes, sir.
How's that?
Yeah, we've got a nice cold front coming in. It's dropped below 100 now. So.
Well, it's snowing around my house here in Vermont, so quite the different climates we got going on this show.
No doubt. The extremes.
So Will's been on the show a couple of times before. He is the owner of Epic Aquaculture, and he likes the sticks like me, and he likes to focus on the premium higher end corals. But we're gonna get into a whole bunch of different conversations about what's been going on with Will and his systems and the business and all that fun stuff. But before we start chatting, I want to take care of some business and thank the sponsors of this live stream. My sponsors are really important to me because they make the show possible with their support. That's important. It means a lot, and I want to continue to bring on awesome guests to help foster this learning environment on the show. Polo Reef, make sure to check out Polo Reef's new YouTube video that drops this Friday, where the infamous Purple Queen Antis is the star of the show. The incredible, you know what? I've read that before. That might be the wrong copy, and I'm gonna correct myself. I think I could find that. Hang on one second. I'm gonna stop the presses. Let me find the correct copy for Polo Reef, because something went kerflooey there in terms of all that stuff. So people, hang in there. Bear with me. This is unprecedented. In terms of
this is live.
this is what happens with a live show. This is not a recorded stream. And when I started reading the copy for this thing, I was like, you know what, something is not right. So let me see if I could dig it. If anybody at Polo Reef is watching and knows the right copy, they want to send it to me. That'd be very cool. Let's see here. Please use this copy for ad tomorrow. Okay, I got it. Well, you know what? It is the right copy. Okay, I think there was a little confusion on my part. So, the Polo Reef video about the Purple Queen Antis. It's an incredibly difficult species, hardly seen in the aquarium. They usually die quickly. Polo Reef tackles a proper quarantine process and is finally successful. Make sure to subscribe to their YouTube channel at Polo Reef for video drop notifications. I think I got that right. That's going to be the video that's dropping this Friday. Watch it at Polo Reef. Champion Lighting and Supply. Besides being a place for hobbyists to purchase saltwater aquarium supplies online, Champion Lighting is also a wholesale distributor for many popular brands. If you own an aquarium store or an aquarium service company, contact Champion Lighting through their website at championlighting.com to set up a wholesale account. Polyp Lab is another supporter of this live stream. They do their part by being ecologically responsible, using less plastic and more recyclable material. ReefRoids is backed by science and uses 100% ocean-sourced ingredients. No filler, no OGM, no gimmick. Polyp Lab, straight results, the best choice for your marine collection. See the ReefRoids difference for yourself. Hopefully I'm not getting busted on too badly in the chat for that snafu. Oh boy, well that's always interesting, but it's all about having fun on this show, right?
That's right.
So well, man, given that it's been a while since you've been on the show, there's been a lot going on with you and Epic Aquaculture. Do you want to just kind of give us the lowdown on what's happening there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had a lot of changes going on, both personally and professionally. Unfortunately, not all of it positive. Had some setbacks. I did get divorced, which of course is a big deal, and has made its own challenges that have impacted the business. So with Epic Aquaculture, while I was married, we were two-income household and was able to do that full time. However, now I have had to take on another full-time job. So I am working a night job. And it does leave my days free for working on the tanks and getting orders out and such. But I have had to scale back things a little bit. At the time that we last spoke, I think I was actually expanding into some Euphilia, some other types of corals, and I've decided I would rather stick to what I know best and truly love, which are the acros, the sticks, and so I've also kind of downsized in that regard to where I am no longer going to be carrying any of the Euphilia. I have my own personal stash of some nice torches and such, but that won't be something that I'll be trying to farm in the future. So it'll be all sticks pretty much for me. And I've also had some setbacks in the hobby aspect of things. Not exactly sure what went wrong. There's quite a few suspects, and at this point, the investigation has gone cold, I guess you could say. I'm not even all that interested in trying to figure out exactly what went wrong because I think there's too many variables.
I'm showing some of the I'm showing some of the pictures, Will, in terms of some of the corals that are impacted.
I have lost a fairly significant number of corals. Fortunately, I have everything banked. I do have either grow outs of everything or frags in my my grow out farming systems, but the corals that Keith is showing are in my main display tank, and I would say I've lost maybe up to about 30% of my my livestock in that tank.
That's significant.
And, yeah, it really is. I had over 200 different species of, well, not species, I should say, varieties of Acropora. Seems like the tenuous or Bifaria, as they're now called, were the hardest hit. But what it kind of culled things, and what I've decided to do is to do a complete reset on that tank.
I'm showing the video now, by the way, too.
Okay, yeah, and so the tank still looks good. I think most people would walk in and say, "Wow, that's beautiful, looks great." But when you know what it was and what it can be, I would call it about 50% of where it was at when it was at its best, and where I know I'll get it to again. So for me to look at it, it's kind of sad.
Yeah, I mean, but, as like a veteran reef keeper, as soon as you walk in a room, I know, others know, but right, people that are not used to seeing like a tank like this, which is just chock full of corals, they're gonna,
right.
But yeah, to the untrained eye, it looks fine.
Right, and so it's over time, like most reefers, I have also accumulated some pests in the tank. They're mostly the annoying type. They don't kill the corals and such, but I have, for example, there's some bubble algae in the tank. On one of the dead colonies, you could see it if you look close. Now, my tangs and foxface keep it in check, but the areas that they can't reach do grow some bubble algae. There's some aptasia in the tank, same situation. My copper band eats them when he can get to them, and he does a great job, so you wouldn't even notice them, but if you look closely, you can see them in some of the nooks and crannies. I have the Astrina starfish. Again, they're not the coral-eating ones, but they do grow fast, and they'll cover a lot of things. They're pretty much harmless, and I do have a harlequin shrimp in there, so he takes care of those. And it is cool to be able to keep a harlequin shrimp. So I actually kind of like the Astrinas, and I might, believe it or not, move them into the reset.
They're apparently like extremely great algae eaters.
Yeah, and like I said, they are never on live tissue in my tank, and I know there's a variety of them, and some people have had issues with them eating a variety of corals, but fortunately, the ones that I seem to have seem to be more or less good cleanup crew, but they do need to be kept in check. So that's what Mr. Harlequin does for me. So yeah, so I just kind of decided. I actually had decided this before some of the corals started to suffer, that I wanted to do a reset on the tank. And one of the reasons why is that, as I mentioned, I've acquired so many different SPS, and the truth is that many of them aren't different. You buy one high-end piece that looks amazing online from the pictures, and you buy another one from over here that looks amazing online in the pictures, and you get them in the tank, and it's like, they're the same piece.
That has happened to me many, not many times, but I've been noticing the same thing. And, we get into the whole name game thing and the marketing thing. And I have one coral that I think it's called the Worldwide Corals Cookie Monster. It's a beautiful green Acropora Florida, with kind of these purple tips. And but I also have the ATL Strawberry Fields. And gosh darn it, man, that's the same freaking coral.
Yeah, and in some cases, I've put them together and literally found out that they're the same coral because there's no grafting, they just grow together because they're the same coral. So, yeah, it happens. I mean, the ocean, it's a big place, but there are a limited number of different corals out there. So and it's not, sometimes you do get people renaming things for the money aspect of it. But in some cases, it's very innocent. It happens that a collector collected 3 pieces in the same area, sold them to different vendors, and each vendor got it in, and hopefully they acclimated it and kept it and grew it out into a second or third generation. But it literally is the same coral as somebody else has that they called it, something special or whatever. So it happens. It's not always nefarious, but, unfortunately, sometimes it is too. So. But what I decided was that I wanted to. So when I was collecting all these corals, my aquascape started out being a very wide open kind of negative space aquascape. And as you can see from those pictures in the video, it's actually got some negative space because the interior of all of the aquascape is actually very wide open. It's great for the fish. It's really neat to look at in person. It doesn't really translate well to photos because it looks like a big rock wall for the most part, but it really isn't. It does create a couple of problems though, and one of them is that it's so good for the fish that there are times where it doesn't look like there's any fish in there because they're all inside. We're doing what they do naturally, and so it's from that standpoint, I'd kind of like to be able to see the fish a little bit more, and then it's just become, it's kind of constricting. I don't know. It's just a lot of rock in what is really a small space. Even though it's a large tank, it's still a very small space compared to obviously nature. And so I've acquired a bunch of Pucani rock, which of course is everybody's favorite rock. It's dry, unfortunately. It'd be nice if it was fresh, but it's dry. But I'm going to be making a new aquascape using all of that, and I'm going to try to keep it much more open. And I'm going to narrow down the number of species that I actually keep in the tank. So there will not be 220 or whatever I had at my peak of corals, but it will be about 50 or 60. I did make a list of the ones that I definitely want to move in there. And but I intend to try to give them space to grow into very nice colonies and not have so much of a cramped look and a crowded look that the tank currently has. So I've got a lot and my intent then is to take 1-inch frags, maybe a little bigger if I have some nice, healthy, chunky areas, and basically grow the tank out from frags that have absolutely no pests whatsoever. I've gotten vermeided snails and things like that in the tank also. So I'm going to try to avoid any of those on this. And it's going to be a very quarantined tank in that I'll be quarantining corals that I'm getting from myself. So I don't even trust
You're locking it down is basically what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the intent is that once I have this growing back out, that I won't be adding anything new to the tank. I've pretty much acquired all the pieces that I want to have. I'm sure there's going to be some new pieces coming in the coming years that I'll be drooling over, but I'm gonna just I'm gonna really try and stick with what I've got. Make sure that I do not add anything at any time from anywhere, because even though I'm very careful with quarantine and all of those things, some of those things they just sneak in. The smallest tiny aptasia on a piece of rubble rock or on a snail or something like that. Bubble algae, can come in easily on a frag plug or on a snail or all those things. And dips just don't do anything. I have nothing in the tank that can be dipped for because I'm very good about that. I'm very good about quarantining and hospital tanks and such. but nonetheless, even with all of that, you still end up getting a few little things that creep by that the dips don't take care of. So this time, like I said, I'm going to really be vigilant about it and absolutely make sure that the tank is as pristine as I can possibly keep it. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, you and I have that sort of thing in common, because I reset 2 different display tanks, and I just took out, broke down a lot of colonies, saved some big chunky frags, put those frags in my frag tanks and kind of let them settle a little bit. And the last few months, I've just repopulated those tanks with the big frags, and I'm really not planning on bringing anything new, because yeah, like you, I do the whole quarantine process and try to be very diligent and not bringing any pests and stuff like that. But it's you never know, right? I mean, you never know what can slip through, and there's a lot of things that can slip through that are you know, you can't, the naked eye is not going to see. You've got bacterial things that could come through. So that's there's just a whole host of different things that can happen to a system when you bring in things from the outside that could just be transported via the water, not even the corals themselves. So you mentioned snails. You know, that was something that you know, I had learned a little while ago, that if you don't bring in like QT'd snails, there's a possibility they could bring in with the you know, disease that fish can you know, get, and right, and whatever else is on that, you know, those shells. So there's a ton of things, but it's you know, that's the beauty of this hobby. There's just a lot of variables that are in play.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, at some point, I think a lot of long-term hobbyists get to a point in their reefing career where complacency, maybe a little boredom kind of kicks in, because when everything's going good, it's like, I don't have anything to do. And of course, by nature, I think we're all tinkerers. And so, you know, I think a lot of people that have had tanks in that 10-year range or something, they end up redoing them, you know, just because, okay, well, you know what, I need a new challenge, and I want to change things up. And maybe they don't completely restart it, but, you know, maybe change some aquascape here, or remove some corals and put something else in. And so it keeps things interesting. They're, you know, they're ever evolving. And like you said, if you can keep things the same without introducing new variables, I think that's your best chance for long-term success. And you know, I think that, like I said, when we first started, I can't pin down exactly what has gone wrong with the tank, but I do believe that some of the issues are bacterial. I think that I may have gotten some of the negative bacteria, and you know, the bacteria is always in a balance. There's always going to be good bacteria and bad bacteria in your tank, and of course, the good bacteria are hopefully going to outcompete the bad bacteria and keep things happy. But with chemistry and all these things that we can't see, things can be changing right in front of you without you even knowing. And I think things got out of balance with my microbiome. And what caused that? That's up in the air. I have a lot of suspects. Like I said, air fresheners was one of them. I went a little overboard with some plug-in air fresheners. But
that could do it, man. I know somebody that had a major tank crash because somebody plugged in an air freshener near the sump. He didn't realize it, and this is in an LFS.
I don't know for sure that was it, but I don't have air fresheners anymore, I'll tell you that. So that's been taken out of the mix no matter what. But you know, my intention, like I said, is to really get this restarted, and I love the watching things grow out, you know, and so it's going to be exciting for me to grow new colonies from these frags again. So I'm actually pretty pumped about it. A lot of work, obviously, and time, but I think in the end I'm going to be happier with the end result there. So looking forward.
I want to thank Chelly for the super chat. Don't forget to hit that like button. Appreciate that. Frag Farm has Will sent a total ICP test and chosen ReefBum as a consultant. Might help to explain what is going on. Thanks, Doug, for the plug. Have you done any ICP testing to try to dig into that issue?
Yeah. So I run I do microdosing of all the elements, and so I do regular ICP testing. The ICP test didn't show anything, and again, you know, that's kind of why I think it's something that we don't normally test for that has happened, whether it's a biological thing or if it is something else that got in there. For that matter, I mean, I've checked every magnet, and I don't think that there's any metal anywhere in the systems, but it could be something I knocked off of a shelf, fell in there. I don't know. With big systems, it's kind of hard to figure that out at times, you know. But I have gone through everything with, you know, flashlights, and I've cleaned out any detritus that was in any of the tanks, and I've really tried to narrow down what it could be. There's, you know, I have very few magnets in the tank because I have had that problem before. I had a magnet go bad that caused a tank crash. But right now I only have basically, I think I only have 4 magnets, and those are on my 4 MP60s, and that's it in the tank. And I rotate those out, the wet sides, every month and inspect them closely, replace if needed. So it's not that, but and it's been kind of very frustrating, but interesting. It's been a very, very slow process. It hasn't been STN, it's been extra STN.
Oh, really?
Extra, yeah. I'm talking over the course of months. A coral just kind of very slowly seems to recede, and but no RTN for the most part. There's a few things that RTN that got stressed out. But most of it just kind of slowly has gone away. And then there'll be a coral right next to it that is happy as can be, colored up, polyps all out. And so it's been quite a mystery, honestly. And like I said, at this point, I'm just ready to say, okay, you know what? We're going to start it over. I'm going to get rid of all that water. I'm going to get rid of all that live rock. We're going to just start everything over here. And whatever it is, hopefully I'll have removed it. And
you know, putting my ICP advisor hat on,
yes, sir.
Take a look at the zinc, take a look at the nickel, and if those things would drop below 5, then that could be an indicator that you know, that's something that is related to, you know, what Fauna Marine is seeing in terms of their laboratory and corals and whatnot. That's some kind of research that they've you know, seen, or okay, insights that they've seen in terms of the zinc and the nickel. And you also got to look at the ratio of the alkalinity to the phosphate. You know, if that sure, deviates significantly from like a 200 you know, index in terms of the DKH and the phosphate, then that's something to think about as well. What was I going to ask you? Have you considered hitting the tank with antibiotics at all to try to like stem the tide? Oxalic acid?
Yeah, I actually did that. I did a Cipro treatment, the one that Michael Paletta did, where it's a 10-day treatment, dosing every other day. It seemed to have some effect immediately. Once I did that, afterwards I dosed some bottled bacterias and actually got an order in from Gerald at Indo-Pacific Sea Farms to get that his Wonder Mud and the other live sand activators that he offers, and that's coming from Hawaii, so it's, you know, South Pacific biome, and that's what I want in the tank. So so I did that to kind of refresh everything, pardon me, and it did seem to have an immediate impact. But after a month or so, some of the decline continued. So I decided not to do another treatment like that, because at that point I had already decided that I'm going to do a reset. So I just it's really hard to figure out exactly what it is. Like I said, and some corals have recovered. Some just seem to be kind of staying where they're at, in a middle of the road type of you know, health-wise, and some just haven't made it. They've just gotten stressed out and slowly receded and then gone, you know. So I think at this point with it, because there's just too many variables for me to really try and figure out, the tank has been up for a good number of years now, so a refresh I think might be a good idea. Also, the live rock that I used was man-made live rock in that tank. I don't know if maybe there's something in that possibly too that has started to leach out.
What rock were you did you have or do you have in there?
You know, it's been so long since I ordered it. I know I got it off of BRS, and I think it might have been their house brand at the time. So I don't know even where that was mined from and such, but it was fine for a long time. But now I kind of question whether maybe that has something to do with it too, because it definitely wasn't ocean rock. So, but it was cheap. And I rely mostly on biomedia for my biological filtration, so I didn't mind the density and things like that. But I do know that this Pucani is going to be a heck of a lot better in terms of filtration and such too. So, and you know, the shapes, they're very natural. I've got some massive pieces that are about 2 feet in diameter and such. Wow. So I'll be able to make them. Yes, I was very fortunate. One of the locals here managed to find about 2,000 pounds of it and bought it all, and then he's selling some of it. So I made the purchase and with this intention in mind. So, but yeah, again, there's just so many things it could be, which is why I really don't even want to state, you know, oh, it clearly is this or clearly is that, because I don't want to tell somebody that this is why my tank is having issues and find out that it absolutely wasn't true, and they go and make adjustments to their tank or something like that, and then, you know, so yeah, but I think I've stemmed the tide at this point, which is why I'm ready to move forward with the reset now, because obviously it's going to be stressful on the corals as I pull them out, and most of what's in there will go to my grow out tanks and become mother colonies for fragging. And like I said, I'll be taking a frag off of each one that I want in the tank, but it'll be growing from small frags, so it'll be empty for a while.
That's the best way to do it, though. You know. So we got a few questions, and some more people are trying to help you troubleshoot here, Will.
Okay.
Rich Colombo, what's the nutrient levels that you're running?
So for nitrates, I shoot for right around 10. It doesn't bother me if they get up to 50, honestly, but 10 is my number on my little chart that I keep. And then 0.08 on phosphate. Again, all the way up to 0.2. I've never had issues, but I do try to keep it in more in the middle range of that 0.08 to 0.1, so that I feel like I have a little room for error on either side if something spikes or something like that. So.
Doug's also wondering whether it's depleted fluorine. Have you no?
No, it's not. Yeah, I've run my ICPs and I dose fluorine, and nope, it's right in the range for the program that I run. And unfortunately, I would have loved it if it was something that was
stood out,
easy to test like that, and it never is. You know, and going in when I first started seeing the issues, I was like, oh, something's got to be out of whack. I'll just send in this ICP and cure it. And it came back with some of the best numbers I've had on ICPs, and I was just, you know, right there, I was like, well, that's not really the water chemistry that I'm adjusting anyway. So it's something outside of that range, and have yet to figure exactly what that is. So. That
is frustrating. What about old tank syndrome? Vinny Garno Bins Fins is wondering. It sounds like old tank syndrome. Have you thought about that? I mean, we don't really even know what old tank syndrome is. I mean.
That's the thing, you know, the old tank syndrome is kind of a buzzword from back in the day. I don't think you hear it as much anymore either. And I think it's something that's completely avoidable and had more to do with deep sand beds than anything else. I don't run a deep sand bed. I do have about an inch or inch and a half of sand in the tank because I love my wrasses. But that being said, I kind of attribute something like old tank syndrome to what my live rock seems to be doing. I don't have any coral and algae on the live rock anymore. For some reason, it's just gone. It grows on the glass. It'll grow on a coral skeleton if it dies, but on the live rock, it doesn't seem to grow anymore. And it did at one point. and that seems strange to me too. I don't know what that's an indicator of, but I don't think it's entirely normal. So yeah, I think, you know, maybe this live rock that, or the rock that I used, maybe there's some issues with it. And like I said, you know, I guess I would go along with that old tank syndrome type of thing, where this rock has now been in that water, or not, you know, I've done water changes and such, but been in the water for years now, and maybe it's gotten to a point where it is leaching something, or maybe it's something has attached to it and chemically changed or something. I don't know for sure, but yeah, I do think it's a possibility. And again, that's another reason that going with a full reset is the decision that I've made on it.
Well, refresh our memory in terms of what you use for calcium and alkalinity supplementation. Are you using calcium reactor Kalkwasser, two-part?
Yeah. So I use a Kalk reactor. A buddy of mine, Jimmy Cox, he owns 4D Aquatics, and he built a custom Kalk, a couple of them actually, one for my frag system and then one for my display tank. They're 5 feet tall, 8 inches in diameter, and will hold about 8 cups of Kalk, undissolved Kalk. And it'll last me about a month or so without having to refill it. So that's my primary, and it's amazing too. It's got all these bells and whistles, adjustable speed on the stir, and it took a page out of the Ecotech book, and the magnet is on the outside that drives the stir on the inside. But it basically uses a similar motor to what you get on the MP power heads. Anyway, so that's my primary, and that is driven by pH. I have there's a pH monitor set up that is part of the controller for that. So I set the pH where I want it, and then it doses the Kalk to keep it there. And over time, if you run a system like that, generally speaking, your alkalinity will fall in line with those numbers. So my alkalinity runs right around 8, which is my target number. And my pH is set at 8.3. So it during the day it'll go above that because of natural biological occurrences in the tank. And at night is when most of the dosing is done by the computer. And so it'll maintain it at 8.3. If it drops below 8.3, it'll dose the Kalk and then kick it back up to 8.3. When I'm having terrific growth, which hasn't been the case lately, unfortunately, I do actually have to supplement beyond that. And I'm dosing on that system, which the overall volume is about 680 gallons. I'm dosing 10 gallons of Kalk a day on that system. Wow. And that's fully saturated Kalk. So it's going through a lot of it, but it'll actually go through even more of that alkalinity at times, and I have to dose. I run a KH director, and that has the ability to dose based on the parameters you set into it. And so I do also dose 2-part. I use the BRS 2-part, and I dose that if that'll keep my alkalinity up. If it happens to drop down to 7.5 or so, it'll dose it back up to 8, and works great in combination. And it's really a set it and forget it, which personally I love.
That was always a good thing. What about calcium, man? I'm curious about your calcium. What does your calcium usually run at?
It's usually, I shoot for 420. If it's 400 or to 450, I'm good with it. 420 is the number I shoot for, though. And then, like I said, alkalinity, I shoot for 8, but anywhere between 7.5 and 8.5 usually does real good. I don't worry about the numbers too much. I check them more to make sure that there's not a problem with the system mechanically. Then I do worry to say, oh, you know, it's 0.1 instead of 0.09. I need to make a change. And I think as reefers become more seasoned and more in tune with their tank, you can really tell just about everything you need to know by looking at it. I know when things are off in my tanks. I can look, and it can be, you know, color, it can be polyp extension, it can be the just the look of the tissue. On certain days it might have kind of a tight look, or maybe it's more of a puffy look or something like that. So I have my baseline where I know when it looks great, and then if I see something off, that's when, you know, be a little bit more concerned that there might be an issue going on. But if I run tests and some of the tests are a little bit off where I want them to be, but the tank is looking great, I'm not going to make some kind of crazy adjustment just to get it back to a number, you know. So I have a range. I have a specific number that I shoot for, but I have a range that I consider to be acceptable, and it's worked well for me. I test twice a week for what I call my big five, which is my alkalinity, calcium, nitrate, phosphate. Obviously, I check temperature and salinity using some other instruments. It's monitored by my controllers, but I check them separately too, just to make sure that the controller's working properly. And then potassium, I also check. I only check potassium about once a month, though. That doesn't change much. So.
Yep. Yeah. You know where I was going in terms of asking about the calcium is like, you know, typically when calcium gets over 440, then you're going to start seeing some precipitates going on there. Yes. And all that sort of thing. So, and that potentially can be something that can help move old tank syndrome along. So I was just, you know, wondering about that. But yeah, it sounds like that's not really an issue in terms of that sort of thing in the tank.
Yeah, I haven't had any, you know, anything showing up on the heaters or on the pumps or anything like that, other than normal growth of algae and things like that. So I don't think there's any precipitation going on. And if anything, my calcium tends to run on the lower side of 420 down to around 400 occasionally, rather than going on the high side of that. So yeah, it is something I've thought about, though. And like I said, unfortunately, the numbers just aren't telling me.
trying to like help you be the detective on this thing, man. It's always so frustrating. You know, you want to, you know, have an answer. You want to say like, all right, I know that's the reason why this happened or this stuff is happening. So I can, I mean, that's the way I am. So I can kind of like, all right, I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to change this and moving forward, everything is going to be great. And I'm not going to have this issue popping up again, but sometimes you just can't figure it out. I know Sanjay, you know, for a long time had corals dying and really just couldn't figure it out. You know, I think he you know, somehow things turned around when he started, you know, doing the ammonia dosing. And
that's something I haven't done yet. And I don't know, I might experiment a little bit with that before I start the official transition. But up to now, anyway, I haven't done that. But you're absolutely right. It's one of the curses of our hobby is dealing with live animals. You don't have black and white answers in a lot of cases. And, you know, it makes it for a real challenge for sure. You know, what'll probably happen is I'll tear everything down and I'll find a screwdriver that I dropped in there.
Damn it.
Oh, there it is. I've been missing that.
That would suck. Rich Colombo says, Abe, who's from Coral Euphoria, had a similar issue and concluded that his system became carbon limited over time. I recall vodka dosing fixed his issue. So, yeah, I mean, you know, supercharging the bacteria.
Right, yeah. And I've done that also. I've used a couple different products, but I have used vodka, I've used vinegar, used a few different things and done some carbon dosing. It didn't, it was great for keeping my nutrients in check where I wanted them, but it didn't, unfortunately, really solve any kind of an issue with this. And so, you know, like I said, at this point, I've kind of mostly given up on trying to figure out exactly what has gone wrong. I have a feeling it's probably a combination of things where if I could fix all of them, maybe everything would be instantaneously, you know, turn around. But at this point, since I know I'm going to go forward with my reset, I'm just not all that worried about it. So I'm keeping a close eye on things, making sure that there's no additional issues or nothing speeds up. But right now I'm started putting together the new aquascape outside of the tank using you know, like eMarco cement to glue things together. Once that's done, then it'll be time to go into high gear, which is a little bit scary, you know, pulling things out of there. I'll be taking all the corals off of the old rock, and like I said, it'll be going into the grow out system, and hopefully everything will be happy with that transition, but you just never know. So,
Will, what's the plan in terms of when So you're gonna pull all the colonies out. You're gonna essentially take frags of the colonies and put them in your grow out system. So you have two different systems. You got a display tank.
Yes.
That's one system, and then you got a grow out system. That's a separate system. So all right. So all the frags are gonna go into the grow out system. What's your plan for the display in terms of doing the reset and getting the Picani, all cycled? What are you thinking of doing in terms of getting that ready to rock and roll to put frags back in?
So on paper, my idea is that I will keep my biomedia and use that continue to use it in the system, which I need to send in an NDOC test and one of the microbiome tests also to find out if there is an issue with the bacteria population. So that's something I'm going to be doing this week. And if it comes back that there's a bacterial issue, then I'm going to have to rethink that part of the plan. If the bacteria looks fine on the test, then like I said, I plan to use the biomedia that I currently have. It will be going through a hand inspection. I use the Pond Ciparex. So fortunately, it's not small media. It's pretty big media. And I'll be looking it over to make sure there's no, algae on it or any kind of a pest, and basically getting that all cleaned up, but keeping the bacteria alive so it'll be in water the whole time. By doing that, what I'll be able to do is obviously I'll be using new salt water, I should say, and then the new Picani rock will go in there. But I think that once I put it all online with the sump running, that the bacteria should start to inhabit the Picani pretty quickly coming off of the biomedia. And the biomedia itself is plenty to handle the biological activity. So it'll be kind of what I plan to do is I will get that up and running, let it run for probably a week or so, see how things are looking in there. The fish will go in immediately, go back in immediately. And then I'll throw a test frag in and see what happens with the test frag. If the test frag shows good color, good polyp extension, once I see any indication of encrusting, that'll be go time for me. That's when I'll start adding additional frags into the tank and go from there. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to get things. That's actually kind of how I started that tank from another tank. And I was able to populate it with corals within a week of setting it up and had no problems. And I'm hoping that within a month or two, I'll be able to have all of the frags that I want to grow out mounted in there and hopefully doing their thing. So
are you draining that display tank in the sump and like just kind of doing a whole big clean and sterilization, so to speak?
Yep. It's all going to get sterilized and cleaned and yeah, everything is going to be.
Man, you're going right from scratch.
Yeah, I figure if I'm going to do it, I got to do it right, because hopefully this will be the last time I'm emptying it for a very, very long time. So, but yeah, I'll be doing that, and that'll be entertaining, I'm sure, but it'll be worth it in the long run.
Yeah.
So
John Wright's been making some comments, and I want to address them. John, he's asking, when do you try to achieve growing SPS? When do you try to achieve growing SPS and not appreciating softies and LPS? Seems like we need to enjoy what we can keep. Yeah. I mean, fair point. It's I've never. Well, man, maybe when I started reef keeping, I had a softie tank. I guess I did, and some LPS, but. Yeah, I mean, for me, and I guess for you, it's always been the sticks, but that's for people that are just kind of getting into the hobby, that is, and for people that have been in the hobby for a long time, you can kind of go on cruise control with a softie tank.
Yeah, no, and I love softies. I love all corals. All corals matter. So, but I have had a softie tank in the past. And I definitely appreciate their beauty, and I can't even tell you why I like sticks so much. I really don't know. People have asked me, and I don't exactly know. I'm sure part of it's the challenge. Obviously, I love the colors. As a kid, whenever I saw like a Jacques Cousteau diving show or something, they would be a lot of times in the South Pacific where you would see those type of reefs. And so that was always imprinted on me as this is what a tropical reef looks like. So I've definitely been drawn that way. That being said, I do have I have some acans in there. I have my OG bounce mushrooms growing in there. So there's a few different things in there. It's not all sticks, but it's mostly sticks. I admit that.
I'm showing that
yeah,
Ghani. I forgot to put in.
Oh yeah, that's a beautiful Ghani that thing's getting pretty big. It's about a cantaloupe size now. So it's.
I forgot to include the picture of the bounce mushroom.
Oh, okay. My one and only softie, and you didn't include it.
Damn, I thought I had it. Let me see if I can find it here.
That's funny.
But yeah, I mean, softies are like, I mean, that's just something that I know a lot of people enjoy, and it's not as demanding versus like SPS. So yeah,
and there may come a time where I go that route. You know, I know as I'm getting closer to retirement and stuff, I want to travel more and such. And quite honestly, having a softy tank or an LPS tank is just a lot less demanding than having a full-blown acro tank. So you never know. I might move that direction at some point, but I'm still a few years out from that. So.
Man, you kind of like you kind of hit on something that I've been thinking about, is like trying to do some more traveling and whatnot like that. But I've got two systems that are SPS dominant, and can be a little stressful when you're on the on the road, especially with two different systems like you and I have. And you know, sometimes you get lucky if something goes wrong and you're home, but sometimes stuff goes wrong when you're not home. And that's
and when it goes wrong and you're home, you don't really think about necessarily anyway, what if I wasn't home and this happened? And yeah, it is a little bit scary whenever I do travel, and I am going to be traveling coming up this weekend actually, and I'll be gone for 10 days. So it's going to be, it's always on the back of my mind. I do have video cameras on the system so that I can pull them up and look at them. But, you know, they're very limited in what you can really diagnose that way. I have a couple of really good friends that live close by, and so they come over to check on the tank once a day when I'm gone, and they feed the fish at that time. So, you know, as long as whatever breaks while they're here, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, right. I can't tell you how many times like I've had shit go down like right before I go away. And I was like, man, thank God it happened right before. You know,
dodged a bullet.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, I don't know. Sometimes I lose a little sleep over that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing where you're going? I you know, we kind of talked about it on the side, but I think it's important.
I'm going to be going down to Tampa. I have actually quite a few friends used to live down in that area, and I have a very close friend. I'm going to be going down there and helping them with some cleanup from the storms, and then hopefully, if things go as planned, we'll actually be taking his boat over to the east side to Fort Lauderdale and going over to Bimini in the Bahamas to do some diving, hopefully.
Wow.
So that'll be our reward for cleaning up some stuff. So
a lot of stuff went down with the hurricane. I know the Mechleys at ACI got hit pretty hard with a power outage for days on end, and it's tough.
Yeah, I was down there for Irma in 2017, and I lost my reef tank to that storm. And so I definitely feel for all the reefers and all the different vendors down there. And it's tough, you know. And, you know, it's like talking about traveling and you know, preparations. You know, when you live in a state like that where you can have issues like that. And out here in California, things happen with fires and such where people have to evacuate, and they can lose their tanks from that. And you know, it's so hard to plan for that kind of epic disaster that nobody wants, and you know, is always going to be at the back of your mind when you live in an area that's prone to that. And so yeah, I really feel for Chris and his family, and hopefully things will recover there for ACI, and for all the other. I have a lot of friends down there, a lot of, you know, vendor friends, hobbyist friends, and neighbors from when I used to live down that way. So definitely all in my prayers every night right now. So
yeah, no, it's tough to have the the power go out. You got to have the backup power plan, and that's not always it's easier said than done. It can be very expensive, especially for commercial operation, to have the sufficient backup power to protect the animals. So it's and there's gas shortages when you have these kind of storms. So it could be hours and hours on a gas station line to get gas to fill the generator. One thing that I always like to say to people: if you have an opportunity to get a generator, consider a propane generator.
Absolutely.
Instead of a gas
or at
generator.
Least a hybrid. You can have them where they run on both. And
because you could, I've got a 100-pound propane tank that, or gallon, whatever the metric is, that I've got 2 generators. I've got a full house backup generator, but I know those are not foolproof because I had one that crapped out on me during Superstorm Sandy. But I also have a thank God I got rid of my reef tank 3 weeks before that happened. It was timing is everything. But I also so now here in Vermont I've got a full house backup generator, but I also have a portable propane generator, which is on basically has been plumbed into a the 100 gallon propane tank. So if my full house backup generator craps out, then I could just roll out the portable propane generator, and that can run for a couple of days, which is pretty awesome.
Great,
and
one of the reasons when I was in Florida, I wasn't a vendor, I was just a hobbyist, and then moving here to Arizona is when I actually started going into the business side of things. And one of the reasons was because Arizona really doesn't have natural disasters. We, knock on wood, but I've never lost power here. And I do have a generator. It's not a whole house generator, but it's a big enough generator to run things if something did happen. But for the most part, we don't really have too many issues with major, acts of nature that can cause a tank to crash. So I was like, well, now that I'm somewhere safe, here's the time. Right? So yeah.
No, you never know what's going to happen, and the way things go in terms of global warming and stuff like that, things can change, and things happen that are unexpected. That
who knows? Maybe we'll be having hurricanes here in Arizona at some point. I don't know. Hopefully not. But,
well, you can get like flash flooding and stuff like that, right? In the wintertime?
Yeah, we do. We have, they call them haboobs, and they're storms during the monsoon season, which is the summer season. And they can be pretty violent storms, but they're not very long lasting. And, winds will get up 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour from those storms, and people do get roof damage and things like that occasionally. And if the power does go out, it's generally a one-day thing. You're not going to have like what's gone on down in Florida where you've got, a week or 2 weeks without power. And so even if the power did go out here, my generator would be just fine for keeping things in line for a day or two while they worked on getting the power back up. But like I said, fortunately that hasn't happened, so I'm probably due. So I better watch out next summer.
But yeah, let's not hope for that. In terms of the heat, though, man, I mean that's got to be. I would think that's got to be taxing in terms of the the grid and the power and all that stuff, right? I mean, aren't there like what do they call them, brownouts?
Brownouts. Yeah. So California has rolling brownouts on a regular basis, especially during the summer. Fortunately, right now in Arizona, our population isn't that dense, so we don't have any issues in terms of the power. But it is one of the fastest growing states, so who knows what's going to happen in the future. That being said, it is incredibly expensive, though, because our air conditioning runs 24/7 from about late March or early April, and it's until usually about this time of year is when we can start opening the windows. But even today, I think the high is like 99 or something like that. And we've had an incredibly long, harsh summer. We went over 100 straight days where the temperature was 110 or higher.
Really?
Yeah,
Holy
it's been
smokes, man! How do you
been
live like that?
it's not, you always hear, yeah, but it's a dry heat. And it's true. It really does make a difference. If you're in the shade in 110 degrees, it's not that bad. It sounds awful, but it's not that bad. Now, if you're in the sun in 110, you're going to know it for sure. But once it drops below 100, it actually is pretty comfortable outside because there is just no humidity. The humidity today is probably at about 10%, and it's just amazing. So you'll sweat, but you won't know you're sweating because it dries so fast, and that cools your body down. So it's actually, like I said, if you stay out of the sun, it's really not bad. And then once we get another couple weeks from now, I believe next Saturday, the high is only going to be like 73. So it's going to plummet here. It's going to
So
really
you can crack the
drop down.
windows now.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. And then from there, we'll have a nice 70 to 80 degrees for most of it'll get into the 60s in like February and such. But so we're finally coming into the nice season where I can actually save on some of that electricity. It is pretty ridiculous. I've actually done some things though to reduce my electricity usage with the aquariums. I used to run a combination of T5s and LEDs, and I've turned off the T5s now, and I really haven't seen a huge difference in terms of coloration. Growth's probably a little bit slower, but coloration-wise, things look great, and the growth is good enough for me to maintain, inventory and such. So that saves quite a bit because I was running on the one system. With the display tank and and there are 4 frag tanks tied to that, I was running 32 T5 bulbs. That's a lot to change out on a yearly basis. And that was just the one system. Yeah, the other system ran just as many. So I was changing out around 60 T5 bulbs every February. And yeah, it's not cheap. And then the electricity that they use and everything else. So it's actually quite a bit of savings there. And like I said, the end result seems to be pretty similar. So I think it's worth saving that money and sacrificing a little bit of the growth for that. But,
yeah, you like to run the kind of like a hybrid light, right? LEDs and T5s, right? Isn't that what you're lighting?
That's what I was running, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And I've actually switched over now, like I said, to all LEDs, and I changed the LEDs I'm using. I actually just recently installed some of the Orphec Naturas, the newest ones they have out. And I can't say for sure the impact on the corals, but man, do they look nice. The color rendition's amazing. So I'm pretty impressed so far with those.
What kind of spectrum are you running with those lights?
So it's pretty similar to the AB Plus in color, that type of a blue. So it's whitish blue look to it. I'd say somewhere around 20K, something like that. And they have a wider variety of diodes than, say, what I was using, which was the Radions. And so their spectrum is a lot wider spectrum than the Radions. And now I haven't personally tested it, but going off of what the information they've provided and some of the testing that has been done, it looks like the spectrum that you can get from them would seem to be a lot more natural and hopefully better for the corals. So we'll see how it works in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, getting back to the issues with the corals and stuff like that, have you given any thought in terms of could it potentially be, the lighting with the UVA, UVB stuff? No,
it all started well before I changed over. That again would be another nice issue if I could say, that's it. I can just turn down this channel. And so no, and like I said, they've only been up for a couple of weeks now, so I can't even say that they're doing much for the coral or anything. But that's definitely not what started it, and nothing seems any worse since the switch over. If anything, I think things are starting to look a little bit better, but I can't say that that's because of the lighting either. So
Will, you've been in the hobby a long time, and I have as well, and a lot of veteran reef keepers can kind of get very happy with what's, you know, there's certain methods and stuck in their ways, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Is like I'm one that gets stuck in my ways sometimes, but
Yep.
and it can be tough to kind of like evolve to new methodologies and new you know, ideas in the hobby to try to like you know, and find improvements in terms of coral growth and colors and all that stuff. Have you found yourself tinkering at all with any new methods or things to potentially that would be, you know, big differences in what you had been doing for years and years? Have you been you know, experimenting at all on that front?
Not a whole lot recently. You know, the biggest change that I made over the last few years was to go to basically chasing pH.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to call it that. But even that method of targeting a pH as opposed to targeting your alkalinity and your calcium levels, it's really been around for a long time too. It's just we didn't necessarily chase the pH, but we dosed the kalkwasser just like we do now, you know. So it's like the past is, you know, the old's become new again or something like that. Kalk is kind of have found a new you know, life with some of the recent developments in the various places that are primarily using that. Other than that, you know, the thing that interests me most is the ammonium dosing that you kind of touched on earlier. That's something that it seems counterintuitive, you know, obviously, but it makes a lot of sense. And so that's something that I'm interested in, and I may look to do after I get the reset done and see what kind of effect that has on the growth. The other thing that I am strongly considering, you know, I just talked about removing the T5s, and now I'm going to say go backwards on this, and I'm actually considering adding a couple of halides to the tank.
Really?
Just to see, you know, what happens. I have not run halides in years. It's been, shut up! Sorry. It's been probably
It worked.
20 years. Yeah, for now.
For now.
It's probably been 20 years since I ran halides. And I've seen a few friends, one in particular who's just had absolutely amazing results combining the halides with the LEDs, and his growth is amazingly fast, and the colors he gets are just stunning. So I'm actually kind of tinkering with the idea of throwing a couple 400-watt radiums up there and going back to the future or something. You know? So otherwise, though, I keep I read the trade magazines. I'm on a lot of the different websites and the you know, different social media and such. So I keep up on the trends and such. But like you, I'm kind of if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of guy, and so I really haven't done a lot of experimentation. And of course, when you're having things struggle a little bit, that's not the time to start to you know, make changes like that either. But how about you? Have you done any recent experimenting with new methods at all? Or?
You know, a few years ago, I started doing trace element dosing and a more frequent ICP testing. So that was something I started doing. I use the Captivate Aquaculture trace elements, and I've been doing the Fauna Marine ICP testing. So, you know, back in the day, for many years, I just kind of like leaned on 10% weekly water changes to get to the trace element replenishment. But you know, I think I've definitely seen better results dialing in the trace elements and doing more frequent ICP testing. I had been doing like weekly ICP testing when I started doing it, and also I was doing it to try to help address a cyano issue with the tank, and so now I've dialed it back to doing monthly ICPs. So I think it's I think it's definitely benefiting the corals. They seem to be pretty happy. Is that something that you have been doing in terms of trace element dosing and ICP testing to try to get all that synced up?
Exactly. Yeah. And I guess I kind of forgot about that because it's an everyday thing. So it's just part of my routine now. But yeah, that is a big change that I made a couple years ago. And like you, I've been very happy with the results. I do not profess to be an absolute no water change guy. I still do water changes occasionally. And of course, with the issues I've had recently, I've done some massive water changes for an extended time. I've been doing about 360-gallon water changes, and I've done, I'd say, about 5 of them. So, you know, I've changed out the water 200%. And so it's, but I do believe in dosing the trace elements, and you know, you can combine that. The salt that I use is the trace elements that are in that salt are pretty much in line with the dosing method that I use. So if I do a water change, it's not throwing things completely out of whack either.
What are you using for salt?
I use the Red Sea Blue Bucket.
Red Sea Blue Bucket.
I've used Instant Ocean in the past.
Me too.
With great success for a very long time.
It's dirty. It's dirty, but you know.
Yeah, I run it through a filter sock in my in my reservoir. But when I switched over to doing the dosing, the trace elements, I wanted, you know, I asked the vendor that produces them what salt is most in line with this, and yeah, that's the one that he recommended. And the price on the Red Sea Blue Bucket is still reasonable. It's more obviously than Instant Ocean, but it's reasonable. So, and the fact that, you know, I get it all wholesale, so that helps with the wallet a little bit too.
Yeah.
And then the fact that I don't have to do that many water changes is great, you know. So I generally try to do a decent sized water change quarterly, somewhere around there. But you know, if I go a few months without doing it and end up going 6 months or something, it doesn't seem to have a major impact.
Yeah,
so,
you know, I had been, you know, on a regular basis doing 10% weekly water changes. This is kind of like before I started doing the trace element dosing, the ICP testing. And now that I'm doing the ICP testing and the trace element dosing, I'm probably doing like around closer to 5% on the water changes. I mean, I guess perhaps I could get away without any water changes, but I do like to siphon detritus out of the sump and out of the, you know, display tanks and all that sort of thing. So you know, and I just you know, I also feel like it's the ocean, and the ocean is constantly getting refreshed, you know, massive amounts of water exchange. So why not try to replicate that in the what we're doing with our closed systems?
I agree. And you know, just by nature of being a vendor, I do water changes by default. You know, you pull water out when you're going to ship a coral off, or when you go to a show. So I've never been a absolute no water change guy. And I've always, you know, when in doubt, it's like, what do? If you can't figure it out, do a water change. You know, it's the biggest Band-Aid there is. And generally speaking, it usually has good results, you know. So I did that for years and years. So I'm not going to ever get 100% away from that. I don't think it's a good idea in a captive system to never exchange that water out. There's things we can't test for that, you know, maybe accumulating or maybe depleting, you know, and you aren't going to know that, and especially without the ability to test for things, because half the time we don't even know if something has a biological impact. You know, there's so much to be learned about the way corals live, the way they grow, the way they feed, and you know, we've barely scratched the surface. So for me, I just think it's just a good idea. You know, that's kind of where I'm at on it. And more power to you if you can do it without any water changes. That's great, but I set it up to make it very easy to do water changes, and that makes it so that I don't put it off all the time.
Yeah, you know, the other thing I've kind of like deviated to bacteria dosing. I did that for a while, but I've stopped doing that now, and you know, I think I'm good without having to dose bacteria to the established you know, systems.
Yeah.
So, you know, I played in that arena for a little while. I haven't really gone in, you know, seriously considered the ammonia dosing. I don't really have a high demand in terms of you know, my nitrates had been in the 10 part per million range for both systems. Now I've kind of cut that back to like the 5 part per million range. So I don't need to dose a lot of you know, nitrates. So I don't have a lot of fish in my systems. I know that people that have a lot of fish and you know, heavy bio load have a greater need to do the dosing. So I'm not sure I'm an ideal candidate for that in terms of the ammonia dosing. So yeah, you know, I think it's you know, that's what's cool about the hobby. There's always something to kind of like think about in terms of playing around and tinkering and stuff like that. You just you got to be careful with that stuff because
for sure, you know, it's so easy to send things over the edge, and that, you know, to that point, that's one of the reasons that I have only been kind of staying on the sidelines with things like that. I'll let other people go ahead and be the guinea pigs, and you know, if there's a reason to start doing it, I'll do it, but it's going to have to be a pretty good reason, you know, because if I'm already having success, I don't really feel the need to, you know, change for change's sake. So we'll see what happens with those kind of things.
Let's just quickly talk about some corals, man. I always like to talk about corals and get specifics and corals. What are some of your favorite corals there, Will?
So the Acropora bifaria, which formerly known as tenuis, probably, I mean, it's kind of everybody's favorite, I think. They're extremely popular in the hobby, relatively hardy, and the colors are just amazing on them. I really like a lot of the smooth skin, the deep water type of acros, the Acropora cardus, and some of those, you know, the dragon type corals. I've got one that's it's the trade name is Hung's Rainbow Explosion. Beautiful smooth skin. That one, I think it's probably a granulosa, not positive, but it looks pretty similar to a granulosa, maybe a loripes, something like that. But yeah, those smooth skins, those are a couple examples, loripes and granulosa, definitely probably my favorites to go along with the bifaria. Those are some of my favorites for sure.
Most difficult corals to keep, acros.
For me, it's funny because there's certain bifaria that for whatever reason I'll get it starts growing, things are looking good, and then poof. And one of them, the trade name's the Sexy Corals Orange Passion. A lot of people have that. It's a great coral. It's been in the hobby for a long time, and I've been able to grow into full-size colonies, but for whatever reason I've just struggled with it. And my colony of that, unfortunately, RTN'd. I do have a backup, so that's good. But the one in the main tank, unfortunately, you know, that's one that has been a problem.
I had like a lot of the Sexy Corals Orange Passion. I had a lot of Walt Disney. I still have a decent amount of the Homewrecker and Jackson's Rainbow Tenuous. All of a sudden, like my tenuous, like we're kind of struggling, and I lost a lot of my tenuous, and I had been like kicking ass with tenuous. So and it's weird because like everything else is like fine. I had some depleted phosphate in both systems, and I think that's the reason why, you know, it put those tenuous over the edge.
Yeah, and it's funny because when one goes, it does seem like they all kind of struggle, and that's what's happened to me recently with the issues I'm having. It's been the tenuous that have been the most affected. Now there's a few that look absolutely fantastic, you know, and so it's really hard to figure out exactly, you know, what's going on there. The other one that I've really struggled with, and then I started having some good success until this recent bout of an issue, are the speciosas. They are stunning, but man, they are tough. And even when you do get them growing, they are super slow growers. So I had already determined, well, you know, from a business standpoint, they're not a very viable coral for farming because they grow so slowly that you're gonna spend more money growing them than you could ever make back on them.
Yeah.
And so I love them, and I'll probably I've lost the speciosas that I had in this latest bout with the issue. That is one that I probably will pick up a couple of frags of those right when I do the reset and do good quarantine on them, make sure they're absolutely clean. But I would like to get a couple of those for my display tank, and because from a beauty standpoint, they're just amazing. But man, they are a challenge. That, I would say, Specios has been the biggest challenge for me, for sure.
What about Millies?
Millies I do really well with, for the most part. I'm knock on wood. And they've done well through the challenges.
Oh, really?
That's one of the ones that have done just fine. Yeah, they for whatever reason, they actually, my Millies seem to be the happiest out of anything. They haven't lost the polyp extension. They haven't lost color. They continue to show growth. And so, you know, and I know that a lot of people struggle with them, but for whatever reason, I've always had pretty good success with the Millies. So I don't consider them to be that much of a challenge, but I do know in general they are. So I guess I've just been lucky with them.
Acro Killer, Purple Monster, send me one, Keith. I've had some issues with my Purple Monster. I lost my main colony. I've lost a few frags. I still have a couple of big chunks of it. I don't have it banked in another system because I was losing frags in that one system, and that was like the only coral that was I was losing. That was like R-tanning in those systems. So it's a freaking tough coral, man, because it's slow grower.
I've had it twice in this system. Unfortunately, my last frag, after it started encrusting and growing, that's when these issues started, and it was one of the first to go. So I don't currently have it. I do have a friend who has it that he's going to be getting me a frag when I'm ready for it. So that's a good thing there. And it's always been one of my favorite corals.
I love it.
The OG Tyree Purple Monster, you know, it was kind of started the whole trend with the high end corals. It was $100 a frag back when that was really expensive for a frag.
Yeah, I think this day and age, you got to give it like 12 inches in terms of like between other corals, because the other corals are going to just overtake it. It's that slow.
It's such a slow grower. Yeah, such a slow grower. It's great that they've started importing a few more of those from the Solomon Islands, though. So hopefully, you know, I don't think the ones that I've seen anyway, they aren't as nice as the OG, but you know, they seem to be the same species, and they so it's good to see some of that coming in to where hopefully you know, it won't end up being out of the hobby at some point. But definitely take care of yours, because you're one of the few people I know that has the OGs. I only know of two.
I know, man. I'm keeping the fingers tightly across. I do have like a 1/4 inch nub in my other system, but yeah, you know, I gotta like be very careful with that thing and just baby it. What about the rainbow splice, man? You still have the rainbow splice?
Yeah, and again, it's one of the ones that's been doing great here during the issues. It's growing like crazy, has excellent polyp extension, great colors. So yeah, it's doing amazing. And that's, like I said, that's probably one of the ones that's been doing the best. So you just never know.
Well, it's a that's a Millie, right? So
yeah.
I did finally get one from Joe Muscat, Tusi Corals last fall, and it's doing well. I love that coral. It lost a little color when I lost my my phosphates bottomed out a little bit, but it's bouncing back and getting some good polyp extension. So yeah,
awesome.
It's
yeah, once it's settled in, it's a pretty fast grower too. So if you're able to get the Millies going, it usually takes off when it gets to, you know, a decent size, has some branches and stuff.
Do you have any other grafted acros? I can't remember.
Not acros. You know, I've got some of the Montes that are grafted, the WWC, and a couple of others. But nothing, yeah, that's the only one. Well, actually, one thing that did happen, I've lost it at this point, but I have a feeling it'll happen again. The RRC Pink Cadillac, for whatever reason, if you have that in a tank with the rainbow splice, it seems to take that the green fluorescent protein that causes the coloration on the rainbow splice, will grow into the pink Cadillac. And
really?
So you can end up with that. Yeah, I've had that happen a couple of times. Now, right now, they are in the same tank, but they're actually at the opposite ends of the tank. But I'll probably put one close to it and see what happens. And I know there was a gentleman in Florida that he's a vendor down there. He's actually gotten that fluorescent green protein in his PC Rainbow, and it's pretty cool looking. It's that so it's got the bright bright red pink of the PC Rainbow along with that that green of the rainbow splice, and pretty cool looking coral. And it seems like he's fragged it a few times, and it seems like it's holding and growing on the frags.
That's really
too.
cool. I've got I got the pink Cadillac in my frag tank on that's connected to the display tank, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, don't be surprised if you see a little green start pop up at some point. Yeah, or put a piece of each on a plug and see what happens. They won't grow together, but it'll whatever mechanism that fluorescent green protein uses to spread, that's one of them that I've found. It tends to accept that green pretty readily, so it's kind of interesting.
Has that been anything you've been like ever thinking about in terms of trying to like get some splice corals, trying to force the issue a little bit there? Have you ever thought about getting into that? It takes a lot of work, right?
Yeah, and not too much other than what we kind of touched on earlier, where I've gotten a couple of pieces that had different trade names that looked similar, and I wanted to see if they were the same and put them together and found out that, yep, they were the same. So, yeah, but I haven't really done too much experimentation with that. Eventually, especially with the tank reset, I might try to do something, put a few of them close together and see what happens in there, have a little fun with it.
Well, Will, man, listen, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about all the the things that you've been going through. It's not easy as a reef keeper to talk about the negative aspects of the hobby. We all go through it, but it's tough to to deal with it. It's tough to talk about it publicly, and it can be quite damn depressing. Yeah. But I think it's awesome that you're willing to do it, because it helps others in terms of learning and trying not to potentially avoid the same thing that's going on with you.
Sure, and I appreciate you having me on. It's always good to see you, and that's one of the reasons that I do want to talk about. A lot of podcasts and a lot of the information you see online is all, look at how great everything looks, and which is awesome. That's what we all aspire to. But the reality of it is that that's not always the case. And it can be really frustrating, especially for a new hobbyist who gets in and they see these amazing tanks and they think to themselves, wow, these guys just know everything. They know what they're doing. They never have problems. And look at me, I'm struggling with this, or I'm struggling with that. No, the fact is that I think I doubt if there's any reef keeper that's never had a struggle. I mean, it's part of maybe the attraction of the hobby too, though, is the challenge of it, But I do want people to understand that, hey, just because I post some wonderful pictures sometimes that look absolutely amazing, that's not always the way it is. It's kind of like when you go out to a fancy restaurant. I don't always look like this. So, yeah. So I definitely, like I said, I do like to share. Well, I don't love to share my struggles, because I don't love to have the struggles. But if I do have struggles, I do like to share, what I've learned from it, and also, getting some advice from people. It's great that some people chimed in with some ideas, and I'm going to look at some of those things and see if maybe there's some other things I haven't looked at yet. If you don't mind, I did just want to mention a couple of things. With Epic Aquaculture, because right now I've kind of been on hiatus with that. I about a month ago, I stopped selling. I take a little break until it was intended to be November, opening in November. But with some of the struggles that I've been having, I think I'm going to actually wait until after the holidays and such before I go back to selling and shipping. So probably sometime mid-January is when I'll be reopening the shop. So hopefully some of my potential customers out there and former customers and such will have a little bit of patience, save some of that Christmas money, and we'll have a special reopening sale. I'm going to have a customer appreciation sale also for all of my customers that have made purchases in the past. They'll be getting a special code to use for a huge discount. And like I said, I think I'll be coming back better than before even. I think that, I still have all the same corals that I had. I've gotten some new stuff, just working on getting the system squared away, and then we'll be back to business. So.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Will, man. And trade shows. When do you think I'll be back to doing trade shows?
Yeah, so I'm my next show, we got a Phoenix coral show coming up in December, and I will do that show. It's
Cool.
I think it's actually right before Christmas, like the 22nd or something like that. That's one of Steve Tyree's shows, so that should be fun.
Nice.
After that, I plan to do probably all 4 Reefapaloozas next year. I'll probably do Restock Denver. And I think that's going to be about it for my show schedule. I'm going to kind of keep it to the bigger shows. The smaller shows haven't done as well over the last few years. So and it is a lot of work and a lot of travel in some cases. So I'll do the local shows that are happening here in Phoenix and then do those bigger shows nationwide. And so probably get in about, I don't know, 6 to 8 shows next year, something like that.
Well,
so,
I might see it Restock in Denver. I might go to that. So
awesome. That's a fantastic
show.
show.
We'll meet for the first time in person.
Yeah, right. That'll be great.
All right, well, man. Well, listen, thank you, dude. I appreciate it, and appreciate all the the information you pass along and the honesty and all that stuff. And you're going to be documenting it all. You said in terms of the journey, in terms of where things are at now, and when you get to that good place again, hopefully in the not too distant future.
Yeah, and actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I am gonna. I have a history of not documenting things very well, and then I go, "Oh, you should have seen it back then. It looked awful." But I don't have any pictures because I don't take pictures when they look awful. So this time, though, I'm gonna document everything as thoroughly as possible. I think it would be cool, to be able to show people. Okay, so this is what happened. Things didn't go so well, so I did a reset, and here's exactly what I did. Hopefully, it'll be a great roadmap to how to do it. If not, it'll be, you can learn from my mistakes or something like that. So.
And how can they find you on social, like Instagram, Facebook, and all that stuff?
So I'm Epic Aquaculture on Facebook, and then my website's www.epicaquaculture.com. And like I said, that'll be active again here sometime probably mid-January, but I'll be posting on there to mention that. And if you join our Epic Aquaculture Facebook group, we're going to be getting a lot more active in there here as we do this reset too, because I'm going to document it on there too. So you can follow along there.
Cool. All right. Well, listen, man, I want to thank you, Will, for being on the show. I also want to thank the sponsors one more time. Polo Reef, make sure to check out Polo Reef's new YouTube video that drops this Friday, where the infamous Purple Queen Anthias is the star of the show. This incredibly difficult species is hardly seen in an aquarium because they usually die quickly. Polo Reef tackles a proper quarantine process and is finally successful. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Polo Reef for video drop notifications. Champion Lighting and Supply, besides being a place for hobbyists to purchase saltwater aquarium supplies online, Champion Lighting is also a wholesale distributor for many popular brands. If you own an aquarium store or an aquarium service company, contact Champion Lighting through their website at championlighting.com to set up a wholesale account. Polyp Lab. Polyp Lab is another supporter of this live stream. They do their part by being ecologically responsible, using less plastic and more recyclable material. ReefRoids is backed by science and uses 100% ocean-sourced ingredients, no filler, no OGM, no gimmick. Polyp Lab, straight results, the best choice for your marine collection. See the ReefRoids difference for yourself. A big thank you to Paul, who's also the moderator as well as the president of the Boston Reefer Society. Please join and support your local reefing clubs. They're so important to this hobby. Also want to let you know that all episodes of Rappin' With ReefBum are available as podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Amazon. My next Rappin' With ReefBum live stream will be on next Tuesday, October 22nd, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My guest will be Paul Allen, the president of the Boston Reefer Society, as well as the moderator of this live stream. You can check out the full upcoming schedule of guests on reefbum.com under the YouTube section. Until next time, be safe and be well.